Hi, and welcome to the 10-minute video summary of the message that was shared at Henrietta Christian Fellowship on the 4th of March 2018. My name is Don Bolt. I'm the pastor at the church, and I'd like to just take the next 10 minutes to share with you some of the highlights of this morning's message. We're looking towards the celebration of the resurrection of Jesus Christ early in April, and so we've been just, looking very closely at Jesus, okay? And he's the one that's going to the cross for us. He's the one who'll be rising from the dead after his crucifixion. And so we're looking at him, okay? And a couple weeks ago we did a message on Jesus, the way, the truth, and the life. And today we're doing a message on beginning with the message of the cross, okay? And, the message of the cross really begins very early in Jesus' life when Joseph and Mary bring Jesus to the temple to dedicate him. And Anna the prophetess and Simeon the prophet, who are there in the temple continually and awaiting what God is beginning to do. When they bring the young child in, they begin to rejoice, okay, and to speak about Jesus. And we have pretty clearly the words of Simeon, who let your servant depart in peace, because I've seen with my own eyes the salvation that you're preparing before the face of all people. And so he's going to be a light to lighten the Gentiles and the glory of your people Israel. And then he pulls Mary aside and he says something to her. It says, "And Simeon blessed them and said to Mary his mother, Behold, this child is appointed for the fall and rise of many in Israel, and for a sign to be opposed. And a sword will pierce even your own soul, to the end that thoughts from many hearts may be revealed." All right, and so we're seeing this already unfolding, even early in his life. And then I'm going to speed ahead to the crucifixion. And it's this fork in the road at the crucifixion. All right, he was either crucified for you or by you. All right, and in Luke 23:33, it says, "When they came to the place called the Skull, there they crucified him and the criminals, one on the right hand and the other on the left." And already we're seeing this illustration of this fork in the road. The criminal on one side of him curses him to his dying breath, and the other one says, "Remember me when you come in your kingdom." And Jesus says to him, "Today you'll be with me in paradise." All right, so, this fork in the road, you have a choice to make now that Jesus Christ has gone to the cross. All right, and so, these last words of Jesus from the cross, he looks down at the soldiers that are just doing a day's work, all right? They're just doing their jobs. They're crucifying 3 people, and then afterwards got a few things to do before lunch. I mean, they're just doing their job. And he looks down at them and says, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they do." All right, and there's different levels of forgiveness that we can offer a person. We can offer them personal forgiveness. I forgive you for what you did to me. And, then this next level, and I believe it's called forensic, where we say, "Oh, please," to the government that would prosecute this person, say, "Please, no, don't enforce the law against them." And then this third level, which is actually to appeal to heaven and say, in terms of eternity, God forgive them and don't hold this against them. We see this also with Stephen at his stoning. And he goes on, again, these words from the cross. There's 7 of them total. I didn't do all of them. "But truly I say to you, today you'll be with me in paradise." His words to the malefactor who is crucified next to him. My God, why have you forsaken me?" Okay, he's quoting the Psalms, and many believe that this is evidence that when all the sins of all the people that he was atoning for were laid upon him, that even his Father turned his face from him. And in John 19:28, he says, "I thirst," and that can mean so many things. When Jesus had received this wine mixed with gall, he said, "It is finished. It is completed." And he bowed his head and handed over the Spirit. By the way, he was dying there, and the one evidence that we have of his deity is that he hands over his spirit. All right, we don't get to do that. We just die when we die. But Jesus cried out at that moment with a loud voice, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." And then, the crucifixion, apart from the resurrection, would certainly be, something, all right? But Paul says that without the resurrection, the Apostle Paul, he said, your faith is in vain, all right? Because if Christ isn't risen, then the dead aren't risen, and if the dead aren't risen, you've believed in vain. All right, so the resurrection is the next piece that we need to look at this as we look at the message of the cross. All right, because the message of the cross doesn't end at the cross, it continues to the resurrection. In Matthew 28:5-6, the angel said to the women, "Do not be afraid, for I know that you're looking for Jesus who has been crucified. He is not here. He has risen, just as he said. Come see the place where he was lying." All right, And so this message of the cross, and we go to 1 Corinthians 1:17 through 24, and this is Paul. Now, he's come down from Athens. Okay, in Athens, he was taken up to this Areopagus, and he gives what's called the Mars Hill Discourse. He's called to account, what is this new teaching that you're bringing? And he gives this beautiful, philosophical, clever presentation of the gospel. And when he gets to the place where he talks about Jesus rising from the dead, it says they began to laugh and said, "Oh, we'll listen to you some other day." And it said only a few people believed. And at the end of that time, it says, and then he went down to Corinth. Now, here he's talking about when he comes into Corinth, and he says, "You know how we were when we came in among you. I was convinced not to know anything except Jesus Christ and Him crucified." All right, and so he's coming with a different message, this message of the cross. All right, and he said in 1 Corinthians 1:17 through 24, "For Christ did not send me to baptize." That was relegated to other people, and we believe for this reason that they didn't want to form factions. Well, I was baptized by Paul, I was baptized by Peter, and have divisions in the body, so they would let others do most of the baptizing. Paul does. He says that he baptized a few people, but he says, "I was sent to preach the gospel, not in cleverness of speech," which was the Greek way. All right, so that the cross of Christ would not be made void. And what's he saying here? He says that there is a simple truth revealed by God to us that if we will embrace it, we will be saved. And he says, all the cunning arguments, if you end up believing because somebody had a crafty argument, you're believing because of the crafty argument. He's saying you should be believing because Jesus Christ was crucified for you. And he went to the cross. Okay, verse 18, "The word of the cross is foolishness to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God." And that's this whole thing. We're seeing this unfolding in our country even now. People saying that somebody says they've heard from God, they're mentally ill or something, and these castigations, these criticisms that are coming, it's foolishness to them. You have to understand that apart from believing that God reveals truth and receiving that truth from God and being able to say, "I believe because God has shown this to me," it's foolishness to you. Okay, but to us who are being saved, to those who understand the truth that we've received from God and have believed it and have received the result of that, the salvation of our souls, all right, this is the power of God. For it is written, "I will destroy the wisdom of the wise, and the cleverness of the clever I will set aside." All right, and he says, "Where is the wise man? Where is the scribe? Where is the debater of this age? Okay, has not God made foolish the wisdom of the world?" And I'm looking at just the things that are unfolding in our country right now around this Me Too, movement, and I don't know where all that's going. I don't know what the end will be of that, but certainly, the mockery that came against people who were trying to keep themselves pure. Men who said, "Well, I don't believe I should be alone with a woman that I'm not married to," and people mocking them, saying, "Oh, how foolish," But now, you have all these people that practice quite the opposite and mocked us, and their whole way of life. All right, and frankly, the blind eye that was given to it is unraveling. All right, and people are seeing that those ideas that allowed that to exist were a kind of evil foolishness. And who knows? Maybe some people find a reason to turn to God in the midst of all this. We'll see. All right, and so it goes on. It says, "For since in the wisdom of God," this was the way God wanted it. All right, "the world through its wisdom did not come to know God." So please to understand that all the clever thinking and all of the reasonings of the world, all the wisdom that those who are apart from God try to practice, does not open up for them the knowledge of God, to know Him. All right, and so it says that, in the wisdom of God, God decided that's not how you're going to find me. All right, so it goes on here to say that God was well pleased through the foolishness of the message preached to save those who believe. So in other words, God puts forth this thing that can only be received if you accept that God revealed it, and that you believe it, and that you receive the outcome of it. And that's how you know it's true. All right. Well, he says that's how He chose to save people. He chose to save them based on the exercise of faith, not by the ability to reason. I want you to think about that, and that God did not set up a hierarchy that says the wiser you are, the smarter you are in the world's wisdom, the more likely you are to get saved. No, in very fact, He said, the more you're willing to just say, "Wait a minute, that has never really provided the answers we've needed. I'm looking for something else." God reveals something, you put faith in it and believe, and God says, "I'll save you because you believed." All right, and so it says, "For indeed, Jews ask for signs and Greeks search for wisdom, but we preach Christ crucified." All right, to the Jews a stumbling block, to the Gentiles foolishness, but to those who are called, both Jews and Greeks, Christ, the power of God, and the wisdom of God. And this is God's doing. And so there's more, all right? And so I'm going to invite you to come back next week and hear the rest of this message on the 10-minute video summary.